The first female gangster rapper ever signed to Def Jam just vanished. One day she was spitting fire on MTV, the next she was gone like smoke. We're talking about Boss, real name Lelle Laws. A woman so raw, so fearless that she made grown men in the industry nervous. But here's the twist that'll blow your mind. The same authenticity that made her legendary also destroyed her career. This isn't just another hip-hop tragedy. This is the story of a woman who refused to fake it, even when the truth cost her everything. If you love uncovering hidden legends like this, don't forget to like and subscribe to Legends Underrated and tell me in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? Detroit, 1969. The city where rhythm lived in the air and struggle was stitched into every block. This was Motor City at its peak, Stevie Wonder on the radio, Diana Ross on the charts, and the hum of car factories providing the soundtrack to dreams. Into this world came Lelle Laws, born to a middle-class family where education mattered and hard work was gospel. Her mother was a teacher, strict but loving. Her father kept Miles Davis and Aretha Franklin spinning on the turntable, filling their home with the kind of soul that seeps into your bones. But here's what made Lelle different. While other kids were playing outside, she was in her room filling notebooks with rhymes. Words that cut deep, stories that painted pictures of the pain she saw around her. She wasn't living the street life, but she was watching it, feeling it, understanding it in ways that would later make her dangerous with a microphone. By the time hip-hop started taking over from Motown's fading glory, this quiet girl had already discovered her weapon, truth wrapped in rhythm. Teachers said she was too quiet. Classmates said she was too smart to rap. But that chip on her shoulder, that was pure Detroit steel, and it was about to forge a legend. When Lelle left Detroit for Houston in the late 80s, she walked into a completely different universe. The humidity hit different, the slang sounded foreign, but the underground hip-hop scene was bubbling with something special. This was the South before the world knew what Southern rap could be. Artists spitting about survival and pride over slow, heavy bass lines that hit like thunder. At first, she stood out like a sore thumb, a book-smart girl with a Detroit accent trying to find her place. But when she grabbed the mic, everything changed. Her voice carried authority, smooth but dangerous, like velvet wrapped around a blade. She teamed up with DJ D, another Detroit native chasing dreams in Texas heat, and together they formed the duo D and Boss. They weren't rapping about fantasy or fairy tales. They were telling the truth about systemic racism, poverty, and what it felt like to be young and black in America. No glamorized gangster stories, no made-up drama, just raw honesty that hit different because it was real. Local DJs started spinning their tracks, and soon her name was moving through the underground like wildfire. But Houston was just the training ground. By 1991, Boss knew it was time to level up. She packed her bags, grabbed her demo tape, and headed west to Los Angeles with nothing but raw confidence and a song that would change everything. That song was called Deeper, and it was about to open doors she never imagined possible. Los Angeles in the early 90s was where dreams lived or died, and Boss rolled into town with everything riding on a cassette tape. No fancy connections, no industry hookups, just her, a few friends, and a demo that carried the weight of her entire journey. Deeper wasn't just another track, it was her autobiography wrapped in haunting melodies and bass lines that made your chest vibrate. The beat hit like thunder, that deep bass line sampling Gwen McCrae's 90% of Me Is You with echoes of Barry White's voice creating an eerie, soulful backdrop. When Boss's voice cut through that production, smooth but full of fire, people stopped what they were doing and listened. This wasn't just music, it was testimony. When that demo landed in the right hands, word traveled fast. We're talking about Def Jam Records, the home of LL Cool J, Public Enemy, and EPMD. Russell Simmons' team heard something they never encountered before. A female MC who wasn't trying to be glamorous or cute. She was raw, confident, and had that Detroit grit that made her unforgettable. The contrast was striking. Her delivery was cold, almost masculine in energy, but her lyrics carried empathy and insight that showed she understood pain from the inside out. When they finally met her in person, everyone in the room felt her presence. She wasn't just talented. She had that indefinable quality that separates stars from everyone else. Def Jam offered her a deal, and just like that, Lelle Laws officially became Boss, the label's first female gangster rapper. It was groundbreaking, revolutionary, and absolutely unprecedented. No woman had ever approached the game from that perspective before. Stories like these are why I built Legends Underrated, so make sure to subscribe for more untold tales. 1993 was a year that rewrote hip-hop history. Snoop was blowing up on the West Coast, Wu-Tang was revolutionizing New York, and right in the middle of this cultural earthquake, a woman from Detroit dropped a bomb that shook the entire scene. Her debut album, Born Gangstaz, hit the streets like lightning striking twice. Released under Def Jam and produced by legends like DJ Premier, Def Jeff, and Tha Alcoholics, this album has something no other female MC possessed at that moment: uncompromising grit. The lead single, Deeper, came first, and the reaction was immediate and electric. That haunting sample, that hypnotic groove, and Boss's voice cutting through it all like a sermon delivered from the streets. Deeper climbed the Billboard Hot Rap Singles chart, broke into radio rotation across multiple markets, and became a fixture on the box. If you were alive then, you remember that feeling when the song came on, everything stopped, and you just nodded your head because you knew you were hearing something special. The streets respected her instantly. The underground crowned her their queen. Even critics who usually dismiss female rappers had to acknowledge her presence. She wasn't selling fantasy, she was delivering truth wrapped in bass and attitude. Tracks like Progress of Elimination and Recipe of a Hoe painted raw, unfiltered pictures that most rappers, male or female, wouldn't dare touch. But what really set Boss apart was her perspective. She sounded like someone who witnessed chaos but also observed it from the outside, smart, measured, fearless. People compared her to Eazy-E, calling her the female version, but honestly, she had her own lane completely. She wasn't trying to be one of the boys. She was proving that women could spit with just as much intensity, intelligence, and attitude. MTV and BET gave her airtime. She appeared in Onyx's Slam video, and everywhere she went, people recognized the shades, the Carhartt jacket, and that confident stare. The album didn't sell millions, but it earned her something even more valuable: respect. For a brief moment, it looked like nothing could stop her. But the industry that built her up was about to tear her down. At the height of her success, Boss was living every young rapper's dream: videos on rotation, magazine interviews, and her records spinning from coast to coast. But in the 90s hip-hop world, there was one thing that mattered more than talent: authenticity. And that's where everything started to unravel. People loved Boss because they believed she was straight from the streets, a survivor turned storyteller whose pain was as real as her lyrics. The name Boss fit the image perfectly: cold stare, deep voice, gangster aesthetic. But then journalists started digging deeper, uncovering details that shattered the illusion. Her real name was Lelle Laws. She came from a middle-class Detroit family. Her mother was a teacher. She'd gone to college. Suddenly, the same media that had celebrated her authenticity turned vicious, reframing her story from rising star to fraud. The backlash was swift and brutal. Back then, the rap scene didn't tolerate image inconsistencies. You had to live what you rapped about, or people would never let you forget it. Some DJs stopped playing her songs. Others mocked her openly, saying she was just acting gangster for show. The same press that had hyped her up now tore her down with ruthless efficiency. But here's what they missed entirely: Boss never claimed to be a killer or a hustler. Her music wasn't glorifying the streets, it was reflecting them. She told stories about the environment, about the pain and mindset that came from witnessing struggle. She was painting pictures, not pretending to live them. The culture wasn't ready for that nuance. Instead of defending herself loudly, Boss stayed characteristically quiet. That silence got misread as guilt, and the same fans who had celebrated her realness began questioning everything. For a female rapper in that era, the fallout was twice as harsh. One misstep, one misunderstanding, and your career could vanish overnight. Def Jam stood by her briefly, but momentum faded fast. Born Gangstaz didn't get the second push it deserved, and by the time the smoke cleared, the world had moved on. The woman who broke barriers was suddenly invisible, punished for telling a truth that didn't match the industry's expectations. After the spotlight faded, Boss found herself standing in deafening silence. The fame that once felt like destiny suddenly became a distant memory. The music industry moved on with ruthless efficiency, and the people who'd been shouting her name were now acting like she never existed. Def Jam quietly let her go, and that second album, the one that was supposed to cement her legacy, never saw daylight. Boss tried staying in the game through features and writing for other artists, but the phone calls grew fewer and farther between. Still, that pen never stopped moving. She kept writing because music wasn't just her career, it was her soul. By the late 90s, life took an even darker turn. Boss began facing serious health challenges that would define her remaining years. Kidney disease struck first, followed by strokes and seizures that left her fighting for her life. Doctors delivered the devastating news: she'd need a kidney transplant to survive. But here's what made Boss legendary: even facing mortality, she never lost her spirit. Friends said she cracked jokes in the hospital, still wielding that sharp Detroit humor like armor. When her GoFundMe campaign went public, fans responded with overwhelming love. People who hadn't heard her name in years donated just to say, "We remember you, Boss." In one interview that still gives me chills, she said something profound. People think being a boss means having money or power. Even though she couldn't tour or perform like before, Boss stayed connected to hip-hop culture. She'd show up at small local events, mentoring young artists, especially women trying to break into the male-dominated rap scene. Her advice was always the same: don't let the game change you. Make the game respect you. The pain was real, both physical and emotional. The industry's rejection left scars deeper than any illness, and the health battles took everything she had. She was fighting on two fronts, her body and her legacy. But every time someone played deeper, her voice was still out there, still standing strong. Around 2010, fans were shocked when Boss made a surprise appearance at a small hip-hop event back in Detroit. Nobody expected her. She'd been out of the public eye for years, but there she was, walking slowly, wearing her Def Jam jacket and those trademark dark shades. The crowd froze for a heartbeat, then exploded with pure emotion. When she grabbed the microphone and dropped the first verse of Deeper, the entire room went absolutely crazy. Every line hit with the same power it had carried 20 years earlier. That moment said everything about who she was. Boss didn't need a stage or chart position to prove herself. Her presence alone was legendary. In interviews during those final years, she spoke with humility and peace that came from surviving everything the world could throw at her. "I used to chase success," she reflected, "but now I just chase purpose." She dedicated herself to mentoring young women who wanted to rap, teaching them not just about bars and delivery, but about staying mentally strong in an industry designed to chew people up. To Boss, music had always been about truth. Fame was temporary, honesty was forever. Even when she was sick, connected to dialysis machines, she'd tell friends, "I'm still a boss. I'm just fighting a different kind of battle now." That's real courage, not the absence of fear, but grace under pressure. Her last years were brutal. Between strokes, kidney failure, and constant hospital visits, most people would have surrendered. But not her. Even from her hospital bed, she'd still write lyrics, still dream of recording again. She wanted to tell her story the way she saw it, not the way the media had once framed it. Unfortunately, time ran out before she could finish that comeback project. When Boss passed in 2024, the hip-hop world finally paused to recognize what it had lost. Artists, DJs, and fans from every corner of the country paid tribute through social media posts that all said the same thing. She never got her flowers while she was here. The reaction was immediate and emotional. Tributes poured in from Detroit to Los Angeles, from old school DJs to younger MCs who'd grown up studying her sound. Some people admitted they hadn't realized how much she'd influenced them until she was gone. That's the bittersweet reality of being underrated. The world catches up too late. Artists like Rhapsody, Tierra Whack, and even mainstream names like Lotto and Remy Ma gave her public recognition, talking about how Boss opened doors for female rappers to spit with grit without softening their edge. Before Nicki, before Cardi, before Megan, Boss had already proven that women could hold their ground in a male-dominated space and keep it 100% real. Critics and hip-hop historians began revisiting Born Gangstaz, calling it ahead of its time. They praised its production, storytelling, and the social consciousness hidden inside its aggression. You could hear echoes of Boss's cadence and fearlessness in countless artists who came after her, even if they never knew it directly. Detroit took her loss personally. Radio stations played Deeper on repeat that week. Murals started appearing on local walls. Her face behind shades with the word respect painted boldly underneath. Fans organized tribute shows where younger rappers covered her verses live, paying homage to the city's first female gangster MC. Her story sparked renewed interest from music journalists who had once dismissed her. They began rewriting her narrative, not as a fraud or fake image, but as a trailblazer who challenged what real meant in rap. She wasn't pretending to be something she wasn't. She was interpreting the world through the eyes of someone who cared deeply about truth. It took decades, but Boss finally got her flowers. The tragedy is that she had to die for people to hand them over. This twist shocked the world. And if you never want to miss stories like this, subscribe to Legends Underrated today. After her passing, something beautiful happened. The internet did what the industry never did. It gave Boss her recognition. Within days, YouTube filled with tributes, remixes, and fan-made documentaries. Viewers flooded comment sections with love and memories. I still got Deeper on my playlist to this day, and she was one of the realest. Period. That's the magic of rediscovery. The generation that grew up with her music got to reintroduce her to young people who never heard her name. Teenagers who weren't born when Born Gangstaz dropped were suddenly vibing to her lyrics, dissecting her bars, and realizing how revolutionary she truly was. Music journalists and podcasters picked up the momentum with retrospectives titled The Forgotten Queen of Gangster Rap and Before There Was Cardi, There Was Boss. Hip-hop panels began discussing how women like Boss, Nicki D, and Lady of Rage built the foundation for modern female rap. Her music streams jumped, YouTube views skyrocketed, and new vinyl pressings of Born Gangstaz sold out online. For an artist who never won mainstream awards, that was poetic justice. The people chose to honor her memory. But more than numbers or charts, it was the emotion that mattered. Fans weren't just listening, they were feeling again. Boss had become a symbol not just of gangster rap, but of resilience, authenticity, and forgotten greatness. When you look back at Boss's story, it hits you right in the chest. Here was a woman who stepped into a man's world and demanded to be heard, not by yelling the loudest, but by telling the truth. She wasn't chasing fame, she was chasing purpose. And even though the world didn't give her recognition while she was alive, her impact proves that realness outlives reputation. Think about it. Detroit raised her, Houston shaped her, and Def Jam gave her a stage. But it was her voice, her words that gave her immortality. When she dropped Born Gangstaz in 1993, it wasn't just another rap album. It was a declaration that women in hip-hop could be hard, poetic, emotional, and unfiltered all at once. The tragedy is that the same truth that made her special also made her vulnerable. The early 90s industry wasn't ready for complexity. They wanted stories that fit clean categories: gangster or soft, real or fake, street or suburban. Boss existed somewhere in between, and that made people uncomfortable. But that's also what made her ahead of her time. Her downfall says more about the industry than it does about her. The system that celebrates authenticity was quick to destroy someone who didn't perform realness the way they expected. Even in her lowest moments, through illness, loss, and rejection, Boss never stopped believing in music. She never stopped believing in herself. "You can take the fame away," she once said, "but you can't take my truth." Her journey reminds us that being underrated doesn't mean being forgotten. Sometimes it just means being ahead. Every tribute post, every remix uploaded in her honor, every fan comment is another piece of her story being rebuilt. And if you listen to today's female MCs who don't hold back, who rap about their pain and own their strength, you can hear pieces of Boss in all of them. She walked so they could run. She broke barriers without even realizing it. That's real legacy, not trophies or charts, but echoes that never fade. To everyone watching this, if you've ever felt underestimated, if your truth wasn't enough for others, remember her story. Boss didn't let rejection define her. She lived and died by her authenticity, and that's something the game can never erase. So tonight, maybe play deeper one more time. Let those lyrics sink in and think about that young woman from Detroit who dared to be different, dared to be real. Because even if her name isn't carved in every Hall of Fame wall, her voice still echoes in every beat, every rhyme, every artist who ever stood up and said, "I am what I am, and that's enough." What do you think? Was Boss ahead of her time? Or was the industry just not ready for her truth? Drop your thoughts below, because this conversation is far from over. Rest in peace, Lelle Laws. Your story reminds us that fame fades, but truth lives forever.